Hello and welcome to Talking Points special interview. I've got Nick Glimsdahl ready to come on stage here. He is a customer experience expert, and we're going to talk about his new book. His new book is called The Heart of Service, a blueprint for human-centric AI in customer service. And of course, human-centric AI is a ridiculous oxymoron, which we'll get to in just a minute. So with that, let me bring on Mr. Nick. Hello, Nick. Hello. How are you
Hey,
doing?
hey, how you doing, Dave? Thanks so much.
So you are a very busy professional. You have your own podcast.
Yeah,
Um, see, I think it's called Press One for Nick. Is that correct?
correct. Yep.
All right. And so you're very busy talking about customer service all the time, and somehow you managed to find some time to write a book. It sounds like an autobiography, The Heart of Service. Is that accurate?
It's definitely not an autobiography, but it did take about a year to write in the old spare time. Mornings, nights, some weekends, but
Some
yeah, it took about a
weekends.
year.
All right. All right. So you just a quick bio on you, experience with helping organizations modernize service operations with top brands across financial, healthcare, the usual insurance, retail, and all about implementing and enhancing the agent experience and driving measurable business outcomes. Another thing I want to talk to you about. Brief introduction before I get to some questions here about your book, The Heart of Service. It's described as a blueprint of human-centric AI and customer service, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
Uh, you've done this through the lens of a fictional company. You kind of follow a fictional character, Chloe,
Yeah.
a contact center leader. She faces impossible tasks of high volumes, low morale, and the pressure to adopt AI without a clear plan. That sounds a little fictional. I mean, that would never really happen. And, and so she and also, I find this really hard to believe too. She questions some of the vendor promises. So we'll get into some of that here. So just a few more points. She wants AI to strengthen, not replace human connection. Well, obviously that's different than what her bosses want. And I think you described it as a story. It isn't a story about robots taking over. Did I get that all pretty good?
I think you just wrote the book, the second book for me. It was
All right,
a
just got the
great
second.
intro.
Okay. Um, there's just a couple. A couple taglines I thought were just worth calling out.
Yeah.
The problem isn't the technology; it's how we use it.
Mm.
That one I resonate with. That one I can buy. And the second one was that stood out to me was don't automate broken processes, fix them first. And so I think that is also a clear message. So let's get into the questions now. This is the part where you start to talk.
Yeah.
Now, the first question for you is why bother? Because whenever I hear a vendor talk about, customer service is important, and if you don't do customer service, you'll lose your customer for life. They're lying through their teeth, and I've written about this. I've talked about this many times. Customers are very loyal to bad service. They don't quit. They don't stop flying their airline. They don't change their banks, despite being frustrated. So question to you is why bother focusing on customer service?
Yeah, I think there are way too many loyal by default customers. That is true. I would say that is that the shift is changing and maybe not as quick as we would expect, but people, I know there's plenty of data that says, oh, if you had two bad experiences, they're going to leave to that next company. I don't know if that's 100% true, at least from my perspective. But depending on the quality of the platform or the product and how much they've poured into me as a consumer, why bother in customer service is, people, according to the stats, right? People will pay more for a better experience over product and price if all things are equal. And if that is true, then you need to find a way to meet the customer where they're at in the channel of their choice and reduce that friction point, and solve the problem. And then obviously with AI, if you're using AI on the front end or in the middle or on the back end, making sure that it's using that technology for the right reasons in the right way, and it has context if it needs to go to a human being. So there are plenty of ways that we can talk about of using, implementing and designing and supporting ongoing for customer experience or customer service, but those are just a couple.
Okay. All right. Um, Certainly I've experienced great customer service. It's the exception, not the rule, which is, by definition of great. And I've certainly experienced some bad customer service, and I have indeed left some brands because of that. But I do find that bad customer service is very common, and I think we both are agreed that this needs to be fixed and can be fixed. And
Mhm.
obviously, the way you fix it is with better technology. Go ahead and correct me on that if you want.
Uh, yes and no, right? If you don't have the right data, if you don't have the right process, or the people are not, you could have the Rolls Royce of technology. However, if it's not designed the right way, if it's not implemented and it's not providing ongoing support to maximize that specific investment, then you're sitting on a Ferrari with no engine, right? You're not driving the outcomes. You're not focusing on that. I think technology is a tool, and it should be treated that way. It should be focused on the outcomes and working backwards to the technology.
And so when you work with your enterprise clients,
Yeah.
uh, do you normally find that it's processes or technology where do you start?
Yeah, well, I start by the outcomes. Like, what do you guys have today? Let's do a current state review assessment. What's working? What's not working? What do you like? What are the metrics from the organization that you're trying to measure, that you're trying to improve? What are the expectations? What are the frontline employees saying? Because I think sometimes they get left in the dust. Also, what are the metrics on the consumer side, and what's working and what's not working from their side? From there, we help them identify ways to improve it. And so we don't ever start with technology. We work backwards to the technology and then making sure that it's the right fit. If you look at the Magic Quadrant leaders, yes, they're all in there. And I think the reason why organizations tend to fail is it doesn't matter if it's direct or from another partner, tends to they get bamboozled by the old marketeering, by the slide decks, by the easy demos, and they get sold by the 6-month ramp or the free professional services, but they're not actually trying to solve a problem. And then they walk away at go live, and the 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, they blame that manufacturer. It's not necessarily the manufacturer or the technology that has the issue. It's all of the other things on the way that process on designing it, supporting it, and implementing that process is where that I think is broken. I call that the go live gap,
Okay.
but I'm sure there's plenty of other tools or processes to improve.
You mentioned the Magic Quadrant, one of my favorite topics, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many leaders there are in that. I think it's in the CCAS Magic Quadrant, it's 4 or 5, something like that.
Yep.
And the thing that people, there's probably 60 CCAS providers. I don't know how many there are, but there's a lot. And what Gartner's identified as the leaders of that space. That's first off their opinion. That's they're entitled to their opinion, and secondly, it is prioritize that process. That report is prioritized and optimized for their customers, for Gartner customers, for tends to be very large multinational corporations and stuff like that. And there's just so many CCAS solutions out there to look at, and some of them may be very more appropriate than a CCAS MQ leader. Depending on the requirements. And so I just think it's important that it's not a answer key. It's a very good opinion by some insightful, smart people, but it's just an opinion.
Yep, I would agree with that. Just real quick, I think that should be a resource or an option to observe. I don't think it should be used as something that you should just say, hey, this is exactly what truth is. You actually have to do your own research, asking additional questions outside of just like the request for a proposal here are the 100 questions you should ask. It's getting past that line of defense and getting them to get their knees a little bit dirty to figure out what's behind the scenes as well.
Well, I'll plug my book. My book is an annual analysis of the Magic Quadrant CCAS. Mine's about 8 pages. I don't know how long your book is, but I did 8 pages on mine. So if you want more insights to that, and I'm sure there'll be a new version coming out here fairly soon, actually. So let's get back to your book. What are some of the biggest mistakes that companies make with customer service?
Well, one of the things that they make is, the C-suite shows up and says, "Hey, we need AI," and you're like, "Great, let's do AI," but you don't actually figure out what are the jobs to be solved with AI. Like, and you're just trying to implement a product to hit a specific metric so that you get your bonus for the year. Like, you should be focusing on going backwards to the jobs to be done. You should just be not taking everybody else by what they're saying. You need to ask these harder questions, help them build out what happens after go live. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that people run into as well. But when it comes to customer service or customer experience or AI for that matter, is they're implementing a tool. That's like saying back in the day, I now have a chatbot, right? You have a chatbot, but what does it actually do, and what are you hoping that it solves for both the agent and the consumer? And there's plenty of still in the market today. There's plenty of dumb chatbots that are not the right fit for the organization or for the consumer. And so don't just turn something on and implement something because that's what you think that the consumer wants. A lot of times they didn't even ask both the consumer or the agent.
Okay. This next question, well, you kind of just touched on it a little bit there, but this next question has to do with this human-centric approach, particularly with AI. I've noticed a lot of the CCaaS providers are saying that they're using AI to create a more human experience now, and it's this obvious contradiction in concepts, but not necessarily. So why don't you explain what you mean by human-centric, and does it involve humans?
Yeah, it should always involve humans unless it's like the mundane tasks. If you need a password reset, you don't need a human involved, especially if your wait time is 10 plus minutes and your call is very important to us, but your wait time is 20 minutes and I just need my password reset. So just let me do that. And I can authenticate through the IVR. You can send me a quick text message or an email and I'm off on my way. Like, those are easy ways. What I always like to start when it comes to AI also is, give the AI to the agent and let them be more efficient. If it's next best actions from a knowledge base, if it is agent summarization after an interaction, if it is, improving the QA, QM through speech and text analytics, like those are all really good things that you can drive efficiencies with the organization. So you can actually focus back on the human interactions. There's plenty of things that you can do, just low hanging fruit to improve the experience to when you actually have a need and you need to talk to somebody. Let's say that you have you're an insurance company and your spouse or just passed away. You need to call in. The last thing you want to do is deal with AI. You want to have a conversation with somebody. They don't want somebody who's measured on a time constraint. And so you see the drive-through window, or you see the red light flashing back in the day saying, "Hey, you're past your time. Let's wrap this thing up." You need that human interaction. You want to sit on with them as long as they need. But ultimately, bring that whole human conversation into AI so that it's not a side-by-side. It's that holistic conversation.
The human experience gets wrapped up in self-service. You talked about password resets when you started that answer, and it also gets wrapped up in AI, and they're kind of a separate conversation. I do sense that the prime directive has changed, and the prime directive has had in the past training wheels, in my opinion. And now there's this big shift about not about we want less agents. We want customers to be more empowered. So a lot more self-service, a lot more automation wherever possible. I'll give you a quick example. An airline I used to fly with had a pretty rich website allowing me to change my flights pretty easily. But I couldn't, and I'm a serious major traveler. I couldn't cancel my outbound flight. I can cancel my return flight, but I couldn't cancel my outbound flight. I had to call. And I did that a lot because I'm always changing my flights around. And I had to call every time, and I was frustrated. Why do I have to call? And they told me, because it's an unusual thing to do to cancel your outbound flight, and we think it's more likely a mistake. So we don't allow customers to do that without calling. It's like the training wheels are on. But now there's like this, again, the prime directive is no, we want more, we want the customers to be more empowered. We want the agents to be more empowered. We want, there's a strong directive to have less humans. And I think a lot of enterprises are fantasizing about no agents, no human agents at all in a contact center environment. Your character was that's a little suspicious because she's like, no, I want to make my agents a little better in your book. But I think there's from the top a fantasy, and I think you're curious on your response to my word fantasy, but a fantasy that these organizations can go without a human agent.
Yeah, I think that there is a fantasy with, maybe let's say 50% of the market, C-suite, that are saying, I can drive efficiencies. If I was 1 out of 10 on how excited I am about AI and driving efficiencies, I'm 11.5. And then there's other people that are saying, you know what, like we need to give them the option to figure out what's best for the consumers, so that, going back to the wait time, if it is a 20-minute wait time, do you want a callback option? Or is there an option that you can solve it with a agentic AI maybe? And you can potentially reschedule your outbound flight in real time with that agentic AI. And in that case, I would want to solve that if it can solve for that specific use case, even if it is a one-off. And if it's not, and it needs to go to a human for some reason, I think that agentic AI can do anything that a human can do in that process, outside of that human empathy interaction. If they need to click on something or fill out a document or send an email or send an SMS or reset a password, a lot of the even rescheduling an outbound flight, I think it could do it no problem. But I don't think it's going to take over. I think it's going to take over a majority, 51% of all interactions in the next 3 to 5 years. I think that is possible, but there is going to be a lot of conversations that still need that human interaction.
Yeah. So I'm glad you clarified that. And I think, well, let me ask you, what do you think? I sense the prime directive has changed, and let's give customers more self-service capability than they've ever had before. Is that possibly because of the way that we can personalize service now? So maybe you give that right to the frequent, the elite flyers, and not to the novice flyers, or we can customize. We can offer customized capabilities to the customer that we're dealing with. Is that a factor, do you think?
Yeah, I think from the organization, it's dealer's choice on what you actually want it to do. You can say, for the frequent flyers that have this status at this airline, I want the personalization to be at this level. If they're at another level, you're saying, I don't want them to be able to do outbound. Maybe that's a way that you can sell your credit card or additional service. For an example, there's a really good grocery store here in Ohio that we frequent a lot, and we spend a decent amount there, and I think they must know that, and we have the ability to purchase event tickets to this specific wine and dine event 3 days earlier than we would if we weren't at that status. And I think that there's all sorts of personalizations that you can make to make people like you who do frequent those flights often feel special and feel like it's personalized and feel valued.
Okay. You had a stat in your book, 80% of AI projects fail.
Yep.
That's been coming up a lot recently in the news with outside of contact centers, AI in general. So do you want to comment on that at all? Do you think that number is going to be the same for the next 5 years, or is that number going to is that trend going to change? And what can organizations do to improve their odds?
I think that AI is a hot topic right now. I think it's not slowing down. If anything, it's going to increase because people are going to say, I just need to start somewhere. And that somewhere, maybe they're just not informed on where to start, how to start. But ultimately, like I said, if you don't understand what you're hoping to solve for and what are the jobs to be done, you can't work backwards. You're just trying to keep up with the Joneses and your next door company instead of actually trying to differentiate and do what's best for your organization. You can't look at the Zappos of your industry. You have to improve. If I'm playing basketball or hockey for that matter, I can get a better stick, right? But I still have to be within the parameters of the experience I'm hoping to deliver and what I'm hoping to solve for and my weak links. And I think the same is true with AI. Like, you have to ultimately say, like, what are the low hanging fruit and what's the cost versus the outcome that I'm hoping to achieve, and then work backwards to that instead of just saying I'm going to keep up with them. So I'm spending $1 million here. I'm going to do a pilot. I think the pilot is key. There are way too many people that try to sell people a bill of goods with AI, and especially with AI right now because it is so hot. And they realize that it's actually not the best ROI depending on that outcome.
Well, that brings me to my last question.
Yeah.
How do organizations that are improving their customer service and customer experience, how do they or how should they measure their success?
Again, that goes back to the individual or to the organization. If the organization is saying, my number one objective is customer lifetime value, then that's how you should be measuring. If it's, first interaction, that is what we're measuring, then I think that's what you should be looking at as well. I mean, ultimately for me, we want to not just get as many customers as possible who are the right fit and who are trying to solve things for the right reasons, but also to keep them for forever. And I don't want a customer for 1 year. I think we can solve and do a lot of really good things, but I want a customer for 20 years. And in order to do that, you have to stay with them. You have to do, for me, I do quarterly business reviews with all my customers. And it's to try to find ways to differentiate the market, to give them release note highlights and saying, based off of this, your contact center, here's the release notes, here's what you were trying to achieve, here's the roadmap item. Let's start working with this collectively, be responsive, high communication, and just solve problems. But you have to be in the know and ask the right questions. So there's all sorts of items that you could dig into on what you're hoping to achieve from a metric part, but it really depends on what the organization wants to achieve and then work backwards to that.
Okay. Well, some of our viewers, even the ones watching on YouTube after the fact, we've managed to put a copy of The Heart of Service under your chair right now. If you take a look under your chair, some of you will find it. For those who did not get one under their chair, I assume it's available at all the usual printed book source outlets. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah. Just search for The Heart of Service on Amazon, and it's probably the best way to find it is right there.
Okay. Well, with that, Nick, thank you very much for talking to us about The Heart of Service, and thanks for watching.
Thanks so much. My pleasure.